Science Fiction Weekly. Short story number 13. Stellar Flash. The Pilot. A preview story for the new Stellar Flash book series. Find out more at stellarflash.com. Short read series. By Neil A. Hogan. Published by Maldek House. Copyright 2017. www.sciencefictionweekly.com. Continue the adventures in Stellar Flash, Alien Frequency. Now available in print and digital formats via Amazon. Stellar Flash, The Pilot. By Neil A. Hogan. In the 22nd century, humans and aliens are exploring universes on different frequencies, with various missions and agendas. The newly inaugurated ship, the Stellar Flash, is on its maiden voyage, having just flash jumped from Saturn Space Station X-1 to a nearby star system, one that exists in the same location but on a different frequency to humanity's solar system. The interdimensional coalition spacecraft Stellar Flash materialized and swung into orbit around a nondescript brown and purple planet. The ship's dark triangular shape crowned with a silver sphere made it look more like a floating piece of decadent chocolate rather than a top-of-the-line frequency research vessel ready for first contact. Captain Victoria Harkness strode purposely along the main corridor, but stopped to look at herself for a moment in the reflection of the door to the bridge. Blue jacket, tight pants, nothing out of place. She was slightly overweight for her early 40s, but she put that down to the long-term effects of her previous desk job. Maybe I'll get some nanites to work on those hips for me. Her short blonde hair, cropped tightly and pointing directly along her chin line, was the latest in hairstyles. Even so, the only one that would be able to appreciate it was herself. She was the only human on board. Then again, she looked forward to some speed grow when she finished this mission to get back to having long hair again. She humphed and shook her head. The ship had just shifted to a higher frequency and she was getting a bit sleepy, as things had become slightly dreamlike. Her mind began shifting back to her younger days, and she shook her head again. Focus. She took a sharp breath, then pushed hard on the door and stomped into the spherical bridge area, the door quickly swinging shut behind her. This was it. The last mission. But her first on the Stellar Flash. Then she took another breath as she saw on the surround screen what was outside the ship. The 360-degree view had been dimmed to ensure the binary red and yellow suns in the foreground didn't white out the entire bridge, and the view was so clear it was almost like everything was made of glass. She was glad it wasn't. Harkness involuntarily shuddered, staring at those massive, deadly, unforgiving stars. The thought of this star system somehow making it back to frequency zero. Instant black hole. Flash jump systems confirm long-range drone records, began her first officer, who she had affectionately named Spinny. 30 planets on not quite elliptical orbits. Life signs still inconclusive. Spinny turned his purple body and larger spines towards her, and she knew she was looking at his front. Similar in shape to a sea urchin, sometimes she had trouble working out which way he was facing. Then again, she didn't think the urchinoids really needed to face anywhere. The second planet is in the human Goldilocks zone, and its gravity is a bit lighter than Earth, but its atmosphere is too toxic to support life like yours. I'm reading high levels of hydrogen, nitrogen, and carbon dioxide, but barely any oxygen. She thought for a moment. Carbon dioxide? We could send Leafy. Harkness waved her hand at their Floren pilot. Leafy had only just joined the crew from Avenue's Flash, but Harkness had known her from university, and her resume read well. Several months serving with Captain Hunter, assisted many on surface missions, saved a crew member from asphyxiation by smothering them with her oxygenating fronds, and a lot more positive recommendations from the reports she'd read. But, this morning, Leafy had been late to the ship. The first mission with a new crew and new ship, and she allowed herself to be delayed by her lover. If she was going to let her emotions get in the way, Harkness decided she had to keep an eye on her. Success, ma'am, said a worm-like creature with multiple sucker-like leg protuberances on its front. Cuddly was a bit like an exotic caterpillar, but without any real kind of head. She wasn't even sure if he had eyes. Stellar Flash has detected surface dwellings that seem to have been printed rather than formed by insects. It looks like we might have a potential civilization for first contact. She couldn't believe it. A planet with life just a frequency shift away, on a ball of rock that had barely any oxygen? How could that even happen? Amy. Her glutinous, blob-like doctor and astrobiologist unstuck herself from her white panel and curled towards her, burbling, as her translator explained. Minor photosynthesis reactions detected suggests low-energy systems, similar to Earth 650 million of your years ago before the Mari-known Ice Age. Small pockets of oxygen in some places, but not enough yet to spread around the planet. So, any life forms are most likely to be plants. Yes, ma'am. Victoria immediately activated her force suit, the electromagnetic field enveloping her and creating a stable atmosphere within. How exciting, she said, eager to get going. Let's go meet some aliens. Who's with me? Her crew were silent. No one was volunteering. They were usually a little bit more excitable and energized than this. Oh, come on, guys, she said. I don't want to make our last trip together too serious. Every time we flash it's a matter of life and death, or a chance of never being able to return to our exact timeline or frequency. We take risks every day. Keep smiling. Then she remembered, none of them actually had the type of mouths that could smile. Harkness moved past Spinny and Cuddly, and looked them all over from the center of the bridge. Geo, a purple ball with teardrops either flat or sticking out of it, was her astrophysicist. Next to Geo was quite a scary-looking insectoid creature with 6 eyes and 12 legs, who had a tongue hanging out like a dog. She'd affectionately named him Puppy, and wanted to hug and run away from him at the same time. But he was a brilliant security officer, and told some great jokes. And then there was Amy. An amoeba-shaped alien that had complete control of every atom of its body. Amy was also their backup surgeon in case they were away from the ship, or their AI couldn't complete an operation. Amy's liquid form was now lying across the blank control panels, sensing the electrical signals of the software. She looked at the 7th control area. It was empty. Where was Taurus? She tapped her communicator. Taurus, are you there? He's recharging, ma'am, said Puppy. Was it one of his jokes? Yes. Nice try. Harkness knew that Taurus didn't need to recharge as his energy came from the universe around him. But he did crackle a bit. A floating ball of static with a blue energy tube running down the center of him, always crackling excitedly about the mission. There was no crackling now. Anyone know what has happened to Taurus? She asked. We don't know, said Leafy. Well, I was going to give a speech about exploring new worlds and new civilizations, but it can wait. We need to locate Taurus. Puppy had already faded, scanning up and down the frequencies. They began checking every part of the ship, trying to locate Taurus. After several minutes, they realized it wasn't possible. There was nothing remotely like Taurus aboard. Number. With the landing delayed while they tried to work out what had happened to Taurus, Harkness began to get annoyed. Her last mission, and this happens. She also started getting annoyed at herself for getting annoyed. She didn't usually do that. How could an energy being simply disappear in a flash jump? Every crew member was symbiotically linked to their ship. There would be no flash jumps without the people inside moving with it. So, what was she going to do? Captain, said Spinny, his slapping speech almost as loud as his translator. I think Taurus is still here. The captain was intrigued. So, definitely another timeline or frequency, yes. Taurus has changed shape. He is here, but he's spread himself thinly. How thinly? We're walking on him. Harkness looked down and could see very faint wavy energy lines flickering across the floor, stretching up through the bridge entrance door and down the corridor. She didn't know whether to be horrified, surprised, or annoyed. She would have liked to have taken Taurus down to the planet with her. These particular binary suns on this specific wavelength, explained Spinny. The conflicting electromagnetic fields has disrupted his own and he can barely hold himself together. Why didn't he tell us? I assume he didn't know. Harkness carefully stepped across the floor, hearing her force field spark and adjust to the outside interference. She turned to Amy. Do you think he'll be able to pull himself together when we return to frequency 0? Yes, said Amy. I'm sure of it. Harkness nodded. Right, everyone. I only need 2 volunteers. Who's coming? Just then there was a beep, and the AI requested their attention, a deep sexy voice, like a jazz or a rap singer. Harkness started feeling sleepy again. Was it activating her ASMR? Stimulating mu waves? Focus. Analysis suggests the planet may have compatible bacteria, stated the AI. Sterilization procedure required. Harkness swore. She was not too happy with this development. She hated sterilization. She sighed. Well, it was space or children. Not both. She looked around her crew again and saw both Cuddly and Leafy step away from their stations and activate their nanite suits. A decision had been made. All right, I've got my team. Everyone else, monitor everything, get to work on recording things we can reinterpret in our frequency when we get back, and Amy, be ready for us in case something unexpected happens. As always, said Amy, somehow conveying a smile through the translation. Oh, and AI, increase the register of your voice a bit. It's a bit distracting. Your wish is my command, said a slightly higher, younger-sounding voice. Harkness, Leafy and Cuddly set the address that the AI had sent them, activated their flash bands, and materialized on the planet moments later. There was a benefit from shifting to this frequency, but still having a connection with frequency 0. They couldn't be seen by the aliens on this planet. They could do as much research as they liked and never be noticed by anything moving. Like anywhere, though, something that has occupied space-time for a while or had a strong gravitational field would still affect most of them. Harkness was thankful for that. She didn't want to suddenly fall through to the core, or be left floating in space as the planet and the star system orbited off without her. She looked about the barren terrain. There were large mountains in the distance, and what looked to be a wall. Let's head over there, she said. They calculated the distance and flashed there in an instant. Then, all 3 of them cried out in alarm. They jumped to what looked to be a major pedestrian intersection for the inhabitants. Multiple creatures of varying hues of brown and black hurried back and forth through the invisible crew. I'll never get used to this, said Harkness, slowly backing into an area of black and purple plants that seemed to be off the usual aliens' pathway. She didn't like aliens walking through her at the best of times. The creatures had what looked like 5 feelers or antennae on the front of their heads. 3 at the front with 2 right above them. They didn't have any eyes that she could see in this light. Perhaps they were small or concealed. While many of the antennae seemed to be black at the base, quite a lot seemed to be of different colors, as though each had been deliberately painted. Harkness began to feel sick as the waves of color washed back and forth. The lighter gravity didn't help her stomach either. You're only getting a little of the colored antennae, said Leafy. I'm picking up a lot more on the infrared and ultraviolet wavelengths. I think these are young ones trying to find a mate. Mating season? Asked Harkness. No. Analysis suggests these creatures are looking for lifelong mating partners, so they make an effort in their youth. Look over there. Leafy pointed a frond at a larger group a bit further away. Wider, and with no colors. Adults, said Harkness. They seem to be guiding the young ones. I think we've appeared in a school, said Cuddly. Many of the young ones are carrying some kind of material, perhaps for recording information, stuck to those flesh ridges underneath, and the older ones seem to be herding them into groups. Well, I've always wanted to go back to university, said Harkness, looking at the creatures. I guess they're intelligent, then. Perhaps. Leafy shook one of her fronds. It depends on what they're being taught. We need to find out. Harkness shifted back to the flow of creatures, and joined the rush, while Leafy and Cuddly followed close behind. It wasn't her mission to stay too long. A quick visit, some records taken, potential for first contact to be established, then she would leave it to the next captain. Still, this world looked very interesting. The antennae creatures marched towards a collection of mountains that were more like cones with spiraling ramps around them. In the distance, massive swinging beams could be seen pouring out solids that quickly became buildings. The school was expanding dramatically. Harkness continued to record her observations as she followed the back of the creatures. Just then, one of the creatures turned to her, looked directly at her flickering force field enveloped form, and made a loud scratching sound. Had she been seen? The other creatures stopped, and looked in her general direction. Oh, said Harkness. While the scratcher pointed her antennae directly at Harkness, the others seemed to twitch theirs around her, sensing something there but not quite seeing. They flicked their antennae at the scratcher, then kept going. Could she guess? Apply anthropomorphic thinking to the situation? The kids had dismissed the wail of the kid who saw her. She was sure of it. She immediately felt sorry for him/her/it. This would be a terrible first contact situation. She had to make sure the child forgot her, otherwise, it might cause problems for them later. She had no idea why she could be seen, but perhaps the electromagnetism of the binary star system was somehow speeding up her bioelectrical field. She had no idea how she could reverse something like that. She felt Leafy come up close to her. You don't need to speak. We haven't been discovered. The creature continued to wave its antennae at her. What was it detecting? Her suit? I've got to go through sterilization anyway, right? I can hold my breath. What are you doing? Asked Cuddly, alarmed. We don't know what effect the bacteria will have here. But the non-interference protocol, said Harkness. That mushroom bug creature might not be the only one. She had to make a quick decision. The creature was still detecting her. She took several deep breaths, then held one and shut off her suit, staying completely still. Her energy shield suit had held a bubble of air around her, and now it was gone. The cold carbon dioxide atmosphere began to rush at her, burning her skin. Even though she wasn't breathing, she could somehow taste the CO2 acid. She knew if she breathed now, she would die. She had about a minute to play with. Would it work? The antennae of the creature flicked wildly, as though trying to work out where she had gone. Then, as though understanding it had just imagined it, it turned and followed the others. Harkness immediately pressed the button on her suit. The force field flickered back around her and began filling with breathable air again. As soon as the bubble had been replaced, she began taking deep lungfuls of air. Both Leafy and Cuddly had been wearing nanite suits rather than energy suits and so weren't visible to the creature. They stood over Harkness now, Leafy's sleeves crimson with emotion, Cuddly shaking a bit. Captain, don't do that again, said Cuddly. Harkness grinned at them. Hey, it worked. The alien forgot it had seen me. And I'm completely fine. Then, she promptly fainted. Number. Leafy was shaking her leaves at her, her equivalent to anger. What you did put the entire ship in danger, she rustled. I need to make a full report. Leafy, I just turned my force suit off for a few seconds. No harm in that. Ma'am. Forgetting the fact that you could have died instantly, or the slight problem of energy suit activation near large concentrations of hydrogen, there is the unfortunate situation of you actually exposing your skin to the bacteriological elements in the atmosphere. I had to do what I had to do to protect the planet from reacting poorly to alien contact. So, you instead introduced human bacteria into the biome. When will you humans learn? But, carbon dioxide-based bacteria, plant bacteria. Not oxygen-based bacteria. Surely those creatures were half insect, half plant? You would know that better than me. As far as I can tell, any bacteria you shed when you turned your suit off was immediately destroyed by the atmosphere and radiation from the binary star system. However, there is always the chance that in a future scenario, you may not be so lucky. Since when do Florens believe in luck? Leafy. I knew what I was doing. I'm captain here, remember. Nevertheless, I have decided to relieve you of command, pending further investigation. What? Stellar Flash, place Captain Victoria Hartness under arrest, by order of the Interdimensional Coalition Code 47. Leafy. I'm sorry, Captain. It is for your own good. We've known each other for years. Nevertheless, it's time we took things seriously. Let's just say I've turned over a new leaf. Hartness would have groaned had the situation not been deadly serious. But what Leafy said next filled her with dread. Stellar, while the captain is under arrest, I will be assuming command. Transfer all security protocols to me. Password $% and $. Leafy left her in the medical room without another word. Hartness' mouth fell open, then closed again. She couldn't believe it. They had been friends for years. Years. And it had been such a small thing, and even then, she had risked her life to protect their mission statement. Something was definitely wrong. And she was going to get to the bottom of it. Number. The ships of the Interdimensional Coalition within humanity's charter had been designed with humanoid shapes in mind, but allowing for the taller and rounder humans of the lower gravity colonies. High ceilings, wide console areas, ergonomically adjustable for individual shapes, and no seats, it had been relatively easy for even the least humanoid aliens to join the crew in the centers. While much of the initial exploration across the frequencies had been done by automated sphere-shaped AI drones, due to the incompatibility of the frequencies, the most the drones could bring back was location information and a basic assessment. No samples, no images, no messages, nothing. It wasn't much better for the crew either. Memories of shifting between frequencies had the unfortunate effect of becoming dreamlike when returning to their own vibrational level. Initially, crew members had to engage in thorough and repetitive frequency-changing exercises to be able to retain the images of the worlds they've seen, and then make a full-typed or mental download report for the records. They'd heard Earth was negotiating a treaty with the storytellers. A race of beings that could absorb the thoughts of the crew in Frequency 1, and then when they returned to Frequency 0, prepare a report. But the Stellar Flash didn't have one of them yet. Another complication was the need to return to the exact time period that the drone had been sent from. There were so many unforeseen forces, from an unknown third star, an undetectable piece of dark matter, to more exotic things like energy vortexes connected to alternate realities, that sometimes it was absolutely necessary for physical beings to be sent to investigate, rather than automated drones. Of course, once an initial investigation had been made by physical beings, it was usually possible for specially built drones to be assembled on the newly contacted world, and then bring a piece of the higher frequency materials into the lower frequencies for careful analysis. Hartness was all for getting drones to continue investigating this particular planet, if she could just get away. What did Leafy want here? Why did she take command? Hartness looked about the medical bay. It was for all beings, including the robot maintenance and security systems, and contained a lot more tools and materials than a normal hospital back on Earth. Rolls of wire, plastic tubing, circuit boards, chitin and rib cutters, and more. You could probably build an army here. She turned to get off the bed, but a robot hand snaked out from the wall beside her, and pushed her back. What? Please remain, said the AI, sounding like a young human male with his voice about to break. I'm perfectly fine. I'd like to go now. You have dry ice burns. Medbits have given you a booster, but your epidermis is going to be a bit sensitive for a few days while your immune system repairs it. I know. I can feel that. I can still function. Please let go. A force field corridor has been created to channel you to your cabin. Harkness sighed. Leafy wasn't letting her go anywhere. And, now that she was in charge, the others would meekly follow. I'm leaving. Let go of me. The robot arm snaked back into its holding shelf and Harkness swung her legs onto the edge of the bed and slid onto the floor. It crackled slightly when she touched it. Taurus. So, they were still in the binary system. Stellar Flash, why haven't we moved yet? Analysis of the new aliens is continuing. But, surely you would have got everything you needed already. Acting Captain Officer Leafy has requested everyone to remain. Why? The computer remained silent. She guessed she no longer had authorization to ask mission questions. She opened the door and could see the faint blue shimmer on the walls that showed her that a force field had been erected to take her back to her quarters. Looking around the medical bay, she quickly gathered a few minor things from the cupboards and pocketed them, then headed out, glad the robot arm hadn't stopped her. As the door closed behind her, the force field fell into place, creating a wall between her and medical, which then moved towards her, programmed to push her to her cabin. She put her hands up comically. All right, wall, you don't need to push. I'm going. This was going to be harder than she thought. Number. Her cabin contained everything she needed, including a food printer. She could live here for weeks, but she definitely wanted to get out immediately. She pulled what she had grabbed from the medical bay out of her pocket. Nothing that would have caused the robot arm to react. Some plastic tubes, a bowl, some copper wire. She looked at the carpet where tiny flickers rushed back and forth over it. Taurus was still trying to bring himself back together. He needed some kind of boost. And she had just the thing. But first, she had to know what everyone was up to. She turned on her monitor and activated the security screens. Even guests could access the monitors. It was a new feature of the ships to help any travelers and non-center crew feel comfortable and welcome. It was time for her to find out what Leafy really had planned. On the screen, Leafy was overseeing the other members of her crew. She couldn't tell whether they were planning, plotting, or following, but she could tell that Leafy had their attention. What was going on? She turned the sound up. Will she be okay? Asked Cuddly. Yes, the AI is happy with her progress. She'll be well enough to return to Space Station X1 and stand trial. Leafy, asked Amy. What is this all about? If you needed the captain's help, why didn't you just ask? She's helped us all before, and she's an old friend of yours. The translators of the rest of the crew confirmed they agreed with Amy. Harkness was very pleased to hear that. It looked like the rest of the crew had no idea what Leafy was up to either. So, she wasn't the only one. She got back to work, placing the bowl on the table in front of her, and then unwinding the copper wire and began wrapping it around its lip. 2 options, she said aloud. Wrap and spin, or crisscross. Electricity generator or Faraday cage. Just then, Leafy told the crew what she wanted to do with the Stella Flash. Harkness couldn't believe it, but she had more important things to do. She wrapped the bowl in copper wire, crisscrossing it several times, then turned it upside down, leaving a small part of it open. Perhaps Taurus could use the small cage as a booster for its shape. She only needed a piece of Taurus to come through to be able to communicate with him. Maybe he'll figure out what she's trying to do and help. She watched the flickering of energy in the carpet grow. A few waves pushed closer to the bowl, then moved away again. But nothing happened. She sighed, then remembered she had failed bioelectromagnetism in school. She had to find another way. Number. I have relieved Harkness of her duties, and I am now the captain. You will do as I say. Ma'am, began Spinny. I can't do that. Flash landing this ship on the planet will cause problems for first contact. Something this big would definitely be detected by the more sensitive aliens. Not to mention that it'll introduce bacteria into the biome, the reason you removed Captain Harkness from duty. Not only that, but... Leafy was shaking and getting more agitated. Spinny, you have disobeyed the direct order of a superior. You're confined to your quarters until further notice. She pressed a button and a force wall appeared around Spinny, guiding him back along the corridor. Leafy, this is not you. Listen to me. Something has affected you. Spinny's translator continued yelling as the wall took him away. Leafy, listen to me. The other crew members looked at Leafy in shock. Anyone else? Asked Leafy, expecting no further conflict. Yes, said Harkness, coming through on the intercom. I would like to help. She looked at Leafy's 3 mouths as they opened and closed. Leafy was waiting for her to continue. Leafy, I understand. I'm sorry if I upset you. I'm sure you have very important reasons for us landing. As you're the captain, I should do whatever I can to help you. I recommend you flash the ship to an empty landmass with no population. That way there would be no conflicts, and limited bacteriological infection both ways. Land on the night side. There are a couple of suitable locations near these coordinates. Perhaps the first one would be good for you. Harkness sent her suggestions via the normal guest messaging system, and within moments Leafy had the images on the main screen. I think the second one is more suitable, said Leafy. Let's do that then. Then, when you've done what you need to do, you can take us all home. Leafy instructed the AI to land, then the AI calculated the best coordinates to materialize it, and moments later, they were there. Perhaps now Harkness would get some answers. Number. The screens showed the rocky ground to be barren. Dark red and browns, with what looked to be chunks of solid greenish-colored glass, as though it had been burnt by something. I'm detecting low-level nuclear bombardment, said geo-weapons were detonated here decades ago. Radiation? Asked Leafy. Negligible. Only slightly higher than background radiation. Right. Harkness, are you listening? Yes, replied Harkness, carefully watching the monitor, but all the while feeling the energy in the floor gain strength. What's your plan? No plan, replied Leafy, and she rustled from her seat and headed down the corridor. Amy, began Harkness. Do not follow me. Leafy's translator yelled before Harkness could finish her request. The other aliens remained standing. Leafy disappeared into the airlock area and activated the door, disappearing outside. Harkness connected her cameras so that her crew could see her. All right team, we all know something has got into Leafy. Suggestions? Lift off now, said Puppy. Leave her there. We'll worry about IC's decision later. We can't just leave her on a planet of aliens in a previously warden area in Frequency 1. She'd never be able to leave. We need to find out what her plan is, said Amy. Cuddly, can you switch the picture to outside? Asked Harkness. I'm locked out. Only internal cameras are working. I'm working on circumventing the lockout, burbled Amy. Give me a few moments. Great. I'll try something this end, replied Harkness. Harkness switched off the screen. She didn't know if Leafy had been monitoring their communications or not, but she didn't want her ace being revealed just yet. She looked down at the floor and was surprised to see the energy field roiling and boiling. Almost like something was hitting a lake with strong sound waves. With a flash that seemed to crack across her room, the energy field rushed together like a reversing supernova, and Taurus was there. Thank you, ma'am. The night side of this planet gave me some shield from the binary suns. I had no idea. I've been around many binary suns before without problems. Frequency 1 binary stars. Possibly. Even so, on the ship I should have been protected. It's likely that Leafy disabled the electromagnetic field protection. What? Why would she do that? Taurus spun and spluttered. No idea. But I am heading to the bridge to reactivate it now. No, not yet. We need to find out what Leafy has planned. Taurus changed to red, blue then green again. Understood. Can you get a fix on her? Taurus energy ball shape spun slightly, then slid through the wall. Harkness turned to the screens and connected with the crew again. Any progress? None. Leafy used a prime number that is considered illegal by the IC. Even Geo doesn't know it. There was a crackle and a new but familiar voice came through the speakers. Why have logins when you can just create a different path, said Taurus. The image was replaced with a signal from the cameras outside, broadcast through the field of Taurus energy. A night sky, with a myriad of stars, the Milky Way looking very different in this frequency. In the center of the image, Leafy stood straight, her leaves out, mouths open, unmoving. What? Asked Harkness. Analyzing, said Puppy. She's growing roots. She's planting herself into the ground. Oh. On the screen, Leafy glowed as parts of her began growing outward. The high concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, along with the energy she'd already absorbed from the twin suns, had massively increased the speed of her metabolism. She was growing fast. Okay, said Puppy. Mild-mannered plant is affected by a radioactive island and suddenly becomes super leafy. Well, I don't think she's planning on saving any worlds, said Amy. Harkness suddenly knew exactly what Leafy was doing. All right, guys. I know what's happening here. We need to stop it. Any chance of releasing me? And me, said Spinny's voice. On it, said Taurus. There was a crackle and flash and both Harkness and Spinny's doors unlocked. They entered the corridor and headed towards the command area. If Leafy is going to do what I think, then it is the end for this world. She's just a plant. How is that even possible? A plant full of seeds ready to spread. Oh. They rushed to the center. Number. The airlock slid open and the suited crew exited and surrounded Leafy. She writhed and shifted, vines growing out of her at high speed, roots stretching under the ground. Leafy, you've got to stop this. You'll destroy any chance this world can join the coalition, implored Harkness. Leafy, are you listening? Asked Spinny. Amy reached out a glistening rope of herself and touched Leafy briefly. There's no consciousness. Leafy is gone, subsumed by the growth. She's spread herself thinly through her roots. Can we pull her back together? Like Taurus? Asked Harkness. Unlikely, said Puppy. She's not the same Leafy. Somehow, she has been pollinated. When that happens to Florence, it's all over. That means she is a different person, said Geo. She may have lost contact with the consciousness of the ship. That is another thing that would make her act strangely. Even if we get her back, she cannot be the same pilot. I'm enacting Protocol 47, subsection. Interrupted Harkness. Ma'am, you're not the captain, said Spinny. And, I think, there might be another way. Spinny turned to Taurus. Plants require water too, don't they? Plenty of water here, said Taurus. Quite a large water table, and in the middle of a lake. But, you could dry it out. Taurus spun, unsure. If her roots reach the lake, she'll be able to filter the water, said Harkness. We need to stop her before she spreads her seeds. Not long to go, said Cuddly. Look. He waved a sucker foot in the direction of Leafy's trunk, and they could see seeds getting larger. The seeds were rough-looking, with little spikes, and what looked to be something like a drill end. They looked like they could hit the ground, bury themselves, then begin growing in moments. Cuddly, you're third in command. With Leafy indisposed and both myself and Spinny removed from duty, you're now the captain. The AI will recognize this. You've got to give us our authorization back. Stellar Flash AI, this is Cuddly. Please confirm the removal of Leafy from the position of captain due to mental issues, and reinstate both Victoria Harkness and Spinny to their rightful positions. Confirmed, said the AI. Welcome back, Captain, said Spinny, as Leafy's leaves continued to curl and grow, and seeds on stems grew closer and closer to the ground. I trust you won't burn Leafy. Taurus, asked Harkness. Taurus shook, then spread outwards across the island, covering the terrain in a thin magnetic layer. The blue energy flickered, then seemed to be absorbed by the ground. Harkness looked across the sea and could see the faint light of the first sun beginning to rise. If Taurus couldn't start now, it would soon be too late, as the binary sun's combined electromagnetic fields would make it impossible for him to come back together again until nightfall. Just then, Leafy began to shake, her thick foliage beginning to shrivel, her vines, leaves and seeds shrinking back into her body. Had Taurus done it? Had he succeeded in reversing Leafy's metamorphosis? Leafy started screaming, her three mouths stretching wide as though she was being cut. What was Taurus doing? Essentially, we're all just energy, said Taurus, coming back together next to Leafy. I just played with her on the subatomic level. What did you do? Let's just say she can't be pollinated anymore. They watched as Leafy's vines continued shrinking, her leaves pulled back into her body, the seeds shriveled and were absorbed, and then her size shrank back, all the while her mouths were screaming. Then, something strange began happening. Her screams began to deepen, her trunk fattened out more, and her greenish hue took on a more brownish appearance, with harder bark-like structures appearing along her flank. Harkness turned to Taurus and raised her eyebrow. She's now a he. Quickest way. Their physiognomy is very different. No way a male could send out seeds. Though, you may find him a bit more argumentative. More argumentative. Puppy made a leg-clacking, hissing sound. His attempt at laughter. Harkness just shook her head. Number. Leafy was kept in the medical bay while nanites worked on removing any molecules he might have left on the planet. The nanites didn't take long, and with Leafy having pulled most of herself/himself back in, and Taurus energy field disrupting the bonds of any residue bacteria, they were able to safely flash back into orbit fairly quickly. Harkness re-engaged the electromagnetic field and Taurus was able to resume his rightful place at the main console in the far center. Sometimes she wished the center had seats, but she knew what happened to the brains of most beings that sat down for too long. Right, team, we need to get back to the planet and learn about the mushroom bug aliens. Complete our analysis and find out whether they're ready for first contact. With the possibility of a recent nuclear war, and those schools now starting to look more like army barracks, I think that... I'm really sorry to tell you this, ma'am, interrupted Spinny, but we've already run out of time. The mission window will close soon. Harkness opened her mouth and closed it again. Her final mission was over already? She looked sadly at the brown and purple planet turning slowly on the surround screen. All their adventures, and this was the finale? Still, preventing a crazy plant with a world domination fetish was probably one of the more fantastic adventures, but she would have liked to return to Saturn with more confidence of a likely first contact signatory. Oh well, it was up to the new captain. Hopefully he'd have better luck. That was over far too quickly, she said aloud. Well, crew, it was great knowing you all, and I enjoyed taking this new ship on her maiden voyage. I'm sure the new captain will take you on many great adventures. And if you ever get to Earth and remember me, look me up. The aliens all said something like a thank you to her for being their captain, then the AI engaged the flash systems and the binary star system faded away, to be replaced by Saturn, and Saturn Space Station X-1A. They were back at frequency 0 in the solar system. Home. The Stellar Flash was a great ship, and she hoped the new captain, Jonathan Hoggart, would take good care of it and her wonderful crew. The only thing she had to do now was get everything down in a report that could be stored at this frequency, before their entire experience disappeared from their memories, like a dream. About the Science Fiction Weekly Short Story Series. The series features stories from the fevered imagination of Neil A. Hogan exploring science fiction, fantasy, and metaphysical concepts. Sometimes hard science fiction, sometimes metaphysical fantasy, and somewhere in between. Usually the stories are between 4,000 to 5,000 words. Many thanks for reading. Issue 1, Japanese Martian Robot Souls. Issue 2, Ancient Alien Dinosaurs. Issue 3, The Galaxy's Driving Force. Issue 4, Gravity Locked. Issue 5, Pyramids of the Moon, Reimagining. Issue 6, Interrelations, Updated. Issue 7, Extraterrestrial, Updated. Issue 8, Nico Girl, Updated. Issue 9, Surviving Mars, aka To Bell a Cat, Updated. Issue 10, Robot Solitude. Issue 11, Phases of the Moon Base. Issue 12, The Manipulator. Issue 13, Stellar Flash, The Pilot. Visit www.sciencefictionweekly.com to find out more. About Neil A. Hogan. Neil A. Hogan has been writing science fiction, fantasy, and metaphysical short stories for as long as he can remember, except when he wasn't. You can sometimes not find him, hidden in a cafe, hunched over his netbook, somewhere on Earth. If you'd like to read more of Neil A.'s writing, please visit the following sites to find out more. Science Fiction Weekly. Released weekly, each issue features a single short story from 4,000 to 5,000 words, with some longer specials. Stellar Flash. A new series set in the 22nd century, featuring aliens, flash ship travel and multiple frequencies of existence. If you like Star Trek, Blake's 7, Babylon 5, The Orville, Andromeda or Doctor Who, you might also like Stellar Flash. Alien Dimensions. Science fiction, fantasy, and metaphysical short stories anthology series edited by Neil A. Hogan. Galactic Missions. Young adult science fiction, fantasy, and metaphysical novella series. Dinosaur Characters. Young adult science fiction and fantasy novella series about intelligent dinosaurs. Alien Characters. Illustrated children's series about friendly aliens from the large Magellanic Cloud Galaxy.